I'm really curious. Let's see. I guess I am recording. How long I can take a video for? Let's see. What should we talk about? How about I posted on Facebook the other day and just got bombarded with negative energy. All I was said was my rights don't end where your fears begin. I heard that on Peggy Hall the other day, thehealthyamerican.org. She is helping many people stay open during lockdowns, especially businesses, because as Catherine Austin Fitts says, the power elite wants local production closed down. And as Mussolini said as he was headed towards the gallows, corporatism is fascism. And when you get corporatism, which means Walmart, Kohl's, Home Depot, United Airlines, the big players, Walgreens, CVS, pharmacies, Lockheed Martin, the big corporations. I can't think of them all, but when they rule the world and you close down the mom and pop shops, then that's where fascism comes in. And so, yeah, when I posted that, everybody jumped on it about masks and how it's such a simple thing to do is to wear a mask. And yeah, they're so cute. And for me, they're not cute. And they're definitely not healthy, and especially for those poor workers who have to wear them for 8 hours. I'm glad to see that they've started using those plastic ones for the 8-hour people. However, it's a sign of complacency. It's a sign of just going along with whatever they tell you, and they have co-opted the whole world. And I'm angry about it. And so are the restaurants, especially when you can go into Walmart and walk around and do whatever you want to. But in a restaurant, you can't. So it's unfair, and it definitely is trying to close people down, and they actually have closed a lot of people. So there's the lockdowns, there's wearing masks on the beach, closing trails, closing, basically telling people they have to stay inside. It's like, no. And we do need to have emergency meetings where the communities come together and say, no, we're not going to go along with this. It's not okay. So most of my friends, I used to be on the liberal radical left, and now I'm leaning towards the right, I would say. Somehow when I got red-pilled, as the Matrix says, you can't go back. It's just too hard to go back when you're red-pilled. I wander towards center, towards looking from the left and looking from the right, and what I see has happened is that most of my friends are never Trumpers, and they definitely have the Trump syndrome. Can't remember what it's called, but they just go berserk over Trump, and they can't hear anything about him. And I have tried to say, let's just jump over Trump. Let's not talk about Trump. It's not, because all dialogues stop at, oh, that's Trump. No. Let's talk about the power elite who actually own mainstream media, including NPR. When I realized, my friends, I didn't think they were watching CNN or news channels, although some do. They're listening to NPR. A friend of mine who I went to visit back in August, I knew she wasn't watching TV, but when I went into her house, NPR was blaring. It's like, oh, this is where she's getting all her info about mask wearing, and she wanted me to wear a mask, and so I did for a little while, and then I just took it off. It's like, no. I'm beyond 6 feet, for one thing, talking to her. And she's scared. And when I realized these people are scared, it's as Catherine Austin Fitts says when she's interviewed by a dark journalist, you really have to reach these people through love, because they can't hear me demanding that they are ignorant or that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Because some of them, one of my relatives said, well, I don't get my news off of YouTube. Well, you should get your news off of YouTube. You should get your news off the internet, not necessarily YouTube, but off of Rumble and Parler and Odyssey and other channels that can't think of right now. Brighteon. They don't censor. They let you store your videos on their channels, and they let you publish what you want to publish. You know, it'd be like the U.S. Post Office saying, oh, we're not going to send your mail anymore because you are too radical, too conservative, too whatever. So the mainstream media is lying. You can't tell people that. They just, for convenience sake, turn it on as a habit. I think, like, particularly my brother, my middle brother, they just turn on the news as a nightly thing and are unaware that the power elite own all of those channels, including NPR. And so they can't be trusted, because they basically, I think MSNBC is owned by, MS stands for Microsoft, owned by, I'm sure it still is, Bill Gates, Bill and Mel Gates, and Merck owns another one, probably NBC or some of them, Merck Sharp and Dome. They don't call it Merck Sharp and Dome anymore, it's just Merck. And, you know, the medical schools are run by the pharmaceuticals now, and they own, it's the oil industry. A lot of the oil products are, the drug products are synthetic. They come from oil products, because Rockefeller, who owned Standard Oil back in the day, totally changed the medical establishment, and they no longer use herbal remedies. And that takes us back to a whole other topic of shutting down the wise women ways of the Renaissance era. Basically, it wasn't a Renaissance for women. It was the other way. It was a horrible time for women, as the Catholic Church was doing its witch burnings. And witch comes from the word wit, which means wise woman, and the wise woman craft, which is witchcraft. And one of the most degraded peoples on the planet are witches. And witches do have a terrible mythology because of the priests and the physicians turning the people against the wise women because they wanted control. And so you take control of the healers and take control of the people that help women, basically, who make a healthy family. If the women are healthy, the women and children are healthy. If the women are well fed, then the women, children, the whole family is healthy. And so they started degrading the family of woman and making it the family of man. And then the man would leave the family, and a lot of single mothers out there tried to survive. And women are pretty much demoted in this culture. They were uplifted for a little while, but they're still, it's really ingrained in us to hate women. And it comes out of hating the earth. And so we have this whole problem of hating the earth and hating women, and children don't maintain health when women's health isn't maintained. So even here in this little town where I live outside of, the women, including myself and other women, started a women's health clinic. And the Oregon Health Plan stopped paying us. I think they just threw our claims in the garbage when they arrived, so they say. The local hospital, that's the Catholic Health Initiatives, stopped paying us, wouldn't even give us, would they give us privileges? I think we had privileges, but they wouldn't pay us. And then the gynecologist and the pediatricians did everything to block us. So we had to eventually close down. We were open for about 3 years, at which time we helped women so much, and their children so much. But if women, where women give birth is where women seek their health for the rest of their lives and their children's lives. So that's the statistics. So the hospital started calling their birthing center, their birth rooms, birthing centers, which is actually illegal, but they started doing it anyway. many illegal things. We took him to court, and we won. We won $200,000, which of course mostly went to the lawyers, and then they went right back to not paying us. So we had to close, and that was very unfortunate. We had a beautiful water birth center and practice. So that in itself kind of is a telling story. And then the next topic is the women, mostly women, who are locked up in the nursing homes. One time I was visiting my dad, and he was in rehabilitation he had broken his wrist. Yeah, he's in his 90s at this time, and if he falls, he breaks something. So he actually was really healthy to about 89 when he fell off a stepladder trying to trim his hedges, because he was an outside person. So after that, about 2 years later, he fell. He would get anxious, like when the doorbell rang or when he was attending something at the door. Usually he would fall. And he broke his wrist, so he's in this facility, and I just wandered around because I was visiting him, and I went down this one corridor, and I was horrified. Not shocked, because I had seen this before, but this actually was worse than what I had seen previously in other nursing homes, like while visiting my grandmother. So people in beds, zonked out in their rooms, just completely zonked out because they're drugged. So then you got the pharmaceuticals companies in the nursing homes. You've got them in the rehabs, you have them in the nursing homes, you have them in the hospitals, you have them in people's homes. Pretty much you go into anybody's home and there's some kind of pharmaceutical in their medicine cabinet. So I was horrified. These people, women basically, in bed, just completely zonked out. In my grandmother's nursing home, the people were in their wheelchairs, just wheeled out into the corridors, the hallways. And it's just so sad. And they were drugged up as well. And my grandmother and I would be having these great conversations, and then the nurse would come in and give her medications. And then next thing you know, her head would just like start falling. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, they actually came in here and drugged her while we were talking. It was basically really horrible. And she had no vitamins. The food was horrible. And she was in her 80s, in her upper 80s. She fell and broke her hip. So, I'm not in a real happy place right now, even though it's getting close to. Yesterday was a solar eclipse, and it's 1 week before the. I'll almost stop. Got a dog chewing over there. Just got a new cat, and the cat brought in fleas, and he doesn't have fleas, but now he has some kind of allergy to I don't know what. Anyway, on the 21st, Aquarius and Saturn and Jupiter are conjunct at 0.29 minutes Aquarius on the winter solstice. And this is very auspicious. It supposedly hasn't happened for like 600 to 800 years. And they're very close together. Now, Jupiter's on a 12-year cycle, and Saturn's on a 28-year cycle, give or take, a couple months here and there. And so every 12 years, Jupiter catches up to Saturn. So they are conjunct at every 12 years. But supposedly this time they're real close together, and it's auspicious that they're together at the very beginning of Aquarius, which has to do with community, has to do with the we. So usually people who are Aquarians want to be helpful in a communal sort of way. So it's a really big deal. If you watch Pam Gregory, astrologer, on YouTube, or pamgregory.com, astrologer, she's amazingly uplifting how she talks about the galactic center, that we are near our galactic center as a solar system, in our solar system, and that there's a lot of galactic, very positive light pouring down on us right now. So this is really something to tap into and be aware of. As somebody was saying, instead of fearing the darkness, we just need to be aware of the darkness And that way we get to transform in the darkness into light instead of fearing it and staying in the shadows. So good to just acknowledge the light and be the light that is coming to fill the darkness. Now, one thing I've noticed in my getting red-pilled, and I know a lot of women have been red-pilled, and guys too, and had to basically be ostracized from family and friends. It's a horrible, horrible feeling. I had a lot of credibility in my community. I mean, decades worth of credibility. And people were essentially incredibly disappointed and feel betrayed by me. Because I started waking up to why there was a lot of gun control going on. And in what shape that was. I can't mention them now. Well, I could mention them, I'm not putting this on YouTube. It was Waco, was a setup. Lamo, stop. Waco, and